Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another daily debate session. And today we have two participants. We have Pranad on the team for the topic, and Niyari on the team that's against the topic or the proposition or the opposition. I'm very sorry. Today's topic is: this house believes that governments should limit the number of tourists coming to a specific country to reduce the impact on the environment or to protect the environment. And we're gonna do this in a way in this format where the participants are gonna be given their first speeches to introduce the topic, their arguments, and then we're gonna have a refutal speech, and finally we're gonna have a question and answer round. And we can begin with the team for the topic. Proposition team, Bernard, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start on my self count of three, two, one. Let me begin by asking how many selfies does it take to kill a coral reef? Well, unfortunately, we are finding out. This house absolutely believes that governments must limit the number of tourists to protect the environment. And if you're still on the fence, you're either not paying attention or you're just too busy building a hotel on a one. So tourism might look pretty in the brochures, but the environmental damage it causes not so picturesque. According to the UN Environmental Program, tourism is responsible for about 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. 8%. That's not even counting the plastic bottles left behind on the beaches or the trails trampled in national parks. And let's not act like this is some distant problem. The Great Barrier Reef is bleaching. Mount Everest is drowning in waste. And closer to home, even the Palgam terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir, where innocent tourists were targeted, reminds us that uncontrolled tourism in sensitive zones can become not just an ecological threat but a national security risk. And yet, some people here think that this is fine. Just bring in more tourists, more money, more development. But let me remind this house: there is no economy on a dead planet. The Great Barrier Reef, once a jewel of biodiversity, has suffered massive coal bleaching due to rising sea temperatures and over tourism. UNESCO even considered listing it as in danger. Meanwhile, in Venice, Italy, yes, the romantic city of canals, the local government literally had to ban cruise ships from entering the historic center because they were causing irreparable damage to the lagoon. And to those who say, but tourism helps the economy, but so does mining, until you realize the ground you're standing on is gone. Sustainable tourism isn't about more, it's about better. Quantity kills, quality preserves. Even the UN Sustainable Goal 12 calls for responsible consumption and production, and specifically names sustainable tourism as part of the solution. So if you're against limiting tourists, are you also standing against the UN SDGs? Bold of you, really. Guys, we are not anti-tourism, we are anti-ecocide. If governments don't step up and control the number of visitors in sensitive areas, we are not going to have anything left for anyone to visit, including future generations. So while some might cheer for for bigger numbers and longer lines at the airport, we are here to defend the forest, the coastlines, and the right of nature to simply exist without being trampled by flip flops and selfie sticks. The time to act is not tomorrow; it's today, before the damage becomes permanent and irreversible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for your speech. And Yari, now you can go ahead.
All right, so I'll start in the backward count of three, two, and one. While I acknowledge that the environment faces serious challenges, we must not sacrifice the global benefits of tourism in an attempt to regulate the complex and multi-faced issue of climate change. This house, as the opposition, stand firmly against the motion that this house believes that the government should limit the number of tourists to protect the environment. First of all, many local communities rely heavily upon tourism to boost their economies, and limiting tourism could deprive them of their jobs and incomes. For example, in places such as Bali, Indonesia, and Tanzania, local economies are heavily dependent upon tourism. People like tour guides, hotel workers and owners, artisans, and local vendors, etc., are dependent heavily on tourism give to support their families. If we suddenly decrease the amount of tourism or limit the number of people who can go to these places, it can lead to poverty. Tourism also gives a chance for people to experience different monuments, histories, natural wonders, cultures, and traditions firsthand instead of through social media. Limiting tourists would restrict access to important cultural and historical landmarks, Locations such as Machu Picchu in Peru are very important cultural and historical as well as educational experiences. Restricting access could prevent people, especially from lower income backgrounds, from witnessing and engaging with history and nature in meaningful ways. Uh, uh, Also, there are many alternatives. For example, eco-friendly tourism initiatives by the governments can uh, incentivize eco-tourism or sustainable tourism practices by encouraging tourists to adopt environmentally friendly behavior without restricting their movement. For example, promoting the use of public transport or encouraging tourists to stay in eco-friendly hotels can drastically reduce the environmental impact without limiting access to these historical places. And by rather than limiting the number of tourists, governments can regulate how tourists interact with the environment. For example, in New Zealand, a sustainable tourism is promoted through guidelines to educate tourists on respecting natural landscapes and resources by avoiding littering and reducing their carbon footprint. In some places, technology is also being used to manage the flow of tourists. For example, in Barcelona, they have implemented a digital reservation system for tourists, which helps to distribute the crowds more evenly and prevent overcrowding without limiting overall access to the attraction. While protecting the environment is an important goal, limiting the tourists is an extreme measure that could have some serious economic, social, and moral consequences. Rather than restricting tourism, we should focus on creating more sustainable models that allow for responsible travel while presenting the rights of individuals, supporting local economies, and ensuring the equality for access to of access to all the cultural heritage and natural heritage sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelly, for your speech. It was interesting. And now we technically have like 15 minutes, so I would suggest that you guys take 2 minutes for each refutal speech, and after that we go to the final round.
Yeah, works.
Go ahead.
I believe the opposition is going first, right? In rebuttal speeches. Hello.
You want to go ahead, Niyari?
Can I have a moment to compile all these arguments?
Yeah. Go ahead, Bernard, because you technically have the time to prepare.
Okay, I'll just start in 30 seconds if possible. I just need to just see my speech. Just a bit. Just a bit. Sorry.
No, it's fine. You should have written some notes during the thing. I'm
Yeah,
writing notes.
I had been doing that only. Wait, just some time.
I'm not allowed to do this, but just to pick up the base, she basically spoke about some examples of how some countries were reducing the impact that the tourists bring to limit the crowding, to all that. She introduced some different types of tourism, which was a very interesting point. That's basically what she spoke about. Would you be able to create some refuttals from that?
I mean, I'm ready. I can go, but if Niyati is ready, she can also go because usually opposition goes first. I mean, I'm okay though.
She didn't have time to come.
Okay, so should I go?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start on my self count of 3 to 1. So let me get this straight. Your solution to saving communities is to overwhelm them. One of the main things I heard from the other side is that many local communities rely on tourism. Sure, but relying on something that's damaging your land, polluting your water, and raising your rent, that's not sustainability, that's survival under pressure. We are not saying no tourism, we are saying smart, sustainable, and limited tourism. Bhutan does this. They charge more per tourist, limit the crowd, and guess what? Their environment is clean, their culture is protected, and their economy still benefits. Now, that claim that if we suddenly decrease tourism, it will lead to poverty. Again, that's assuming communities have no other options. That's not true. What leads to long-term poverty is environmental collapse. If a coral reef dies, no divers come back. If a heritage site erodes, tourists stop paying for tickets. Then what? Tourism without limits is a short-term sugar rush. It brings money, yes, but it leaves destruction that takes decades to fix. Just ask the people of Bali, where trash from tourism has clogged rivers and beaches, and now locals have to clean up after tourists every day just to keep the place livable. The third point they made was about limiting access and cultural heritage. Here's the thing: access don't mean flooding. You don't protect culture by putting it on a scale. Too many visitors can actually harm the very heritage we claim to value. Machu Picchu had to start using timed entry tickets and daily cabs because stones were really wearing away from overuse. And I'll be honest, if someone truly respects another culture, they won't mind waiting a little or paying a little more. That's the cost of preservation. Also, let's not pretending this is about freedom of travel. It's about responsibility of travel. We don't let people drive without speed limits. We don't allow unlimited logging in protected forests. So why should tourism, something that affects climate, culture, and security, be exempt from limits? We are not against tourism. We are against reckless tourism. You don't protect a place by letting it down on your own popularity. You protect it by knowing when to say enough is enough, and that's what motion is really about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You went above the time, but that's fine. You can go ahead, Niyari.
Alright, so I'll start in the backward count of 3, 2, and 1. First of all, it is about management of tourism instead of numbers. According to the UNEP and UNESCO, environmental damage like coral reef bleaching is mostly caused by climate change and pollution, not tourist numbers. For example, the Great Barrier Reef actually benefits from ecotourism, which funds the protection and research. The WNWTO promotes responsible tourism in not restrictions. Costa Rica protects over 25% of its land while supporting millions of tourists. Bhutan uses a daily fee system to ensure quality, not limit access. Another point that the proposition has mentioned, that restriction can harm local economies, which I've mentioned. Sorry, for the WTTC says that 1 in 10 jobs globally depend upon tourism. In Nepal, tourism supports entire communities. Better policies like average cleanup rules solve waste issues without cutting visitors. Limiting tourism risk is creating elitism. The UN SDG Goal 12 calls for responsible consumption, not exclusion, so future generations can enjoy World Heritage too. My opposition mentioned that Venus banned cruise ships, they banned cruise ships, that too, but not tourists. Reducing environmental damage while keeping the city open to all is what was the aim of banning these cruise ships. In conclusion, tourism isn't the enemy, mismanagement is. With smart regulation and sustainability, we can protect the environment without harming community or access. Thank you.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was just writing down some notes. You can go ahead and start the question and answer round.
Is there a time limit to how long the answer or the question can be?
Just know that we technically have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay, so are we going to have just one question each, right? Then
I think
Two,
we can do 2 in 7 minutes.
you can do some.
yeah, it will work with us. So I'd like to ask the first question. If tourism is such a net positive, why do reports like the UNWTO's 2022 Tourism and Environmental Review have warned that without clear visitor limits, fragile ecosystems face irreversible harm? That's the United Nations saying it, not me. So are you saying that UN is wrong?
I am not saying that the United Nations is wrong or any other organization is wrong. What I'm saying is that instead of just reducing the number of visitors, we can actually inform them about how to protect the environment. And as you said, another study by the UNEP and UNESCO shows that ecotourism is actually helping protecting the environment instead of damaging it. For example, the example I gave was that the coral reef research and protection is being funded by the ecotourism. Can I ask the question now?
Yes, you can.
Alright, so according to the WTDC, tourism supports 1 in 10 jobs worldwide. How do you justify limiting tourist numbers when it could harm millions of livelihoods, especially in developing nations?
Yeah, jobs and a dead coral reef. Dream on. The UN World Tourism Organization itself says that the environmental decline destroys long-term economic prospects. Just look at the Boracay, Philippines. The government had to shut it down to tourists because pollution was so bad. It was called a it was called a cesspool. Guess what? What happened next? After strict visitor caps and cleaning up, the island bounced back. Tourists returned, but this time sustainability, healthy nature, healthy economy. The quick buck isn't worth killing the golden goose, is it? Thank you.
Your turn to ask a question.
Yeah, I just have one. Just a sec. Let me just see which question to ask. I mean, um, okay. If regulation, wait, okay. If regulation alone works, why are countries like Venice, Machu Picchu, and the Galapagos Islands all limiting tourists? They tried regulation, it didn't work. In fact, UNESCO even threatened to put Venice on the World Heritage in danger list. Do you really believe your approach will work better than what those countries already failed at?
First of all, Venus didn't ban tourists, it banned cruise ships to manage environmental harm. Isn't it actually a better solution to than limiting the number of visitors overall? And also, regulation will work better when tourists are informed about how they should interact with the environment, and actually they're informed about how they can protect the environment through ecotourism.
That works.
One more question.
Right. Yeah. So I have a last question. Uh, if we can actually guide tourists to behave responsibly through policy and education, then why should we punish everyone with restrictions?
Yeah. Okay. I'm audible, right? Hello, yes? Yeah. If wishes were horses, coral reefs would be still alive. Decades of brochures and responsible tourism campaigns haven't stopped the Great Barrier Reef from bleaching or Mount Everest from becoming a garbage dump. Even UNESCO in their visitor management guide says caps and quotas work where education alone fails. Telling people to behave is great until you realize 5 million people with cameras still trample the same wildflower patch. Sometimes the only thing that works is closing the gate. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you very much. Now that was interesting. We have like 2 minutes left, so I'll use it to give you the feedback because I usually give feedback. That was very interesting. You guys handled the topic very well, even though it was specific. Bernard, as usual, used some real evidence, and I like the examples you gave. I like the thing where you say that mining is cool till the ground is gone. That's very interesting. Niari, same goes for you. Use some real examples that are actually true. I know some of those examples, and yep, these are very interesting arguments. Now, regarding the refutals, maybe sometimes you should not exaggerate things too much because Bernard, like when you say that, basically the summary of your speech was like relying on tourism is bad. See, that can be nice, but sometimes you should pick specific examples. Like you can't just say Indonesia, for example, because Indonesia, you'd be like, what other option do they have? Yes, they might have some options, but people always go for the best option, right? So the best chance they had was with tourism. They can't just abandon it because this thing started like 50 years ago. So I mean, it's a good argument. I understand your position. So, but sometimes it has to make sense. If I was in the opposition, I would refute you easily because you made it. You gave a general statement. You didn't like pick specific examples. You need to pick specific examples because what you say does not apply on everyone. Got it? And
Yeah.
Niari, you spoke about how protection is possible, and I was actually waiting for somebody to bring up the fact that there are different types of tourism, right? There isn't just one type of tourism. Like when you say tourism, that's like the larger definition, but we have different types, and she introduced that in her speech. She spoke about the eco-friendly tourism, long-term tourism, short-term. other things. That was very interesting. Thank you very much, Niyari. And finally, I'll give you my personal opinion, what I think about the topic, because I like discussing. Maybe this could help you in a future debate or something. These UN articles and statements that they release, they don't apply on everyone, right? These are based on statistics collected from worldwide, but that does not apply on everyone. Like when UN said that, what did they say, Bernard? They spoke about how we should be banning tourism in specific places or things like that. That doesn't apply on everyone, right? Like Indonesia, for example, shouldn't ban. That depends on the statistics they have. Like if you read the more detailed articles, you will understand that they don't generalize those things. So you don't only read the title, but you read the whole thing. So that could help you understand better, right? Besides that, the examples that you gave regarding the real life places that are actually banning tourism, these were different. There were different factors regarding those places. Maybe those places are small enough, like real small. So, and maybe it like contains a